The Bigfooty Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, Conda, power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the Bigfooty Port Adelaide podcast, the first podcast for 2014. This podcast is dedicated to all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host, Baaacckk19, and with me as always is regular co-host Fishing Rico 4. How are you, mate?
Yeah, very good, thank you, Macca. And what about yourself?
Always good, buddy, always good. And joining us once again is one of our moderator extraordinaires, Ford Fairlane.
Yeah, something like that. Good to see you again, Macca.
Good to have you back on. First podcast for 2014. I think this is going to be a very exciting year.
It is. Where's the time go?
I know. It didn't seem that long since we were playing in the finals last year.
I still have the Geelong and Collingwood finals on my recorder. I haven't even watched the Geelong one again. I can't quite bring myself to do it.
I think I saw Westhoff's goal, and that's about it for that one.
Fair enough.
All right, well, let's get straight back into it and talk about the internal trial that was on the weekend under very, very hot conditions. It was about 42 degrees when they were playing. Your thoughts, Ford, on how they looked?
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, we all expected them to be really fit, and clearly they are. Just everyone out there in great shape, and even on the sideline seeing Bobby Carlisle roaming around among the Renos before the game, and Hamish Hartlett going up in the stand to do an interview with 7 News with Mark Soderstrom, looked in just immaculate condition, and the guys out on the oval looked superb, and also say thank you to Peaceful Warrior for a great set of photos that really highlighted the conditioning of them.
Yep.
They ran really hard in those conditions. I was really sort of more looking at the game style than individual players, and was just really impressed by the hard running and the slingshot type football again coming out of defence. I think it was a lot of what we saw last year. I'm sure that with Walsh and Hart there now, they've probably tweaked some of the strategies a bit, but I think the basics of that hard running defence, as soon as they got the ball in defence, were guys running to positions and they knew where they were running, and Colquhoun and Logan really stood out for me as well with some real gut running into space, and Broadbent as well was terrific. In a couple of instances, I remember at one stage when Schultze nailed that goal from the scoreboard, and Broady had run from the back pocket right into the vacant space on the old, what they used to call the fat side of the ground. I'm not sure what they call it now. He's jumping up and down, star jumping, and look at me, I'm Schultze. Schultze just kicked the goal because it just felt like it.
That's what he does.
That's exactly right. But really impressed by the running and by the guys knowing where to run, and that their teammates knew where those players would be. And again, pushing the ball forward. I think last year we were the first or second highest forward kicking or disposing team in the competition, and look to be carrying that on as well. In terms of individual players, I guess I sort of watched a bit more of the new guys and the unknowns. Was really impressed by Ben Newton. Thought he was very good in the white team, and then surrounded by the greater talent, I think, of the black team, just lifted it another gear in that third and even last quarter. And I quite liked what I saw of Polek while he was on the ground, and he was in the white team, and some really nice disposal, some really nice movement through the centre square. I think a guy who we've all sort of talked about as an outside finisher, some of his inside work and stoppage work, which Baaacckk had highlighted earlier in the week, was really outstanding.
Absolutely.
I'll let you guys have a say now.
Yeah, I thought they looked really, really fit, and they all looked a fantastic size about them too. They've all put on quite a bit of muscle. You know, they all look very toned, heaps of run. I think something that I want to touch on, which really impressed me, was the skill level. Because normally in these games, I come away thinking, God, have they actually touched a football yet this pre-season? But they were hitting targets. They were hitting hard targets. You know, they barely missed a beat. You know, they were really nailing the handballs. And I think that's what our game plan is going to be based around this year, is that really quick, as you said, slingshot run, almost Sydney style, coming out of defence.
Yep, and they're certainly not afraid to bring the ball back into the corridor. That really seemed to be an emphasis of the trial game, was bring the ball into the corridor, and there were guys just getting into space. And often it was Colquhoun who just reads the play so well. getting into that space in the middle and players just fearlessly centering the ball back to the guy on his own through the centre corridor. And I think I saw posted on in the thread was that the scores were 27-4 to 7-2, and I think the accuracy was mainly due to the fact that the ball just kept coming down through the corridor, and a few difficult shots were definitely nailed, but there was a lot of simple set shots for goal. I mean, it's hard. I mean, they talk about it bruise-free football, and it is an internal trial, so it's hard to put too much emphasis on that. But as you said, at this time of the year, to be hitting targets that well and kicking for goal that well, it's a pretty good sign.
Yeah. I think it's probably a little hard to gauge how our forward line went, just because they were playing on a couple of really sort of undersized players. I know they had Daniel Flynn playing at full back for a lot of the day on Butcher and Schultz. The Reikiwaza brothers, they were a little bit undersized on those two players as well. But I thought our forward line movement and the structure that it based around looked pretty good.
Yes, it was, and considering they didn't have Monfries there, who's just a menace up in the forward line, getting in behind and reading the play so well, and he's so strong overhead. But going with the tools up there with Butcher and Schultz and Lobe drifting up there occasionally, and they really did monster those smaller sample-sized defenders. I would have liked in the second half probably to see, say, Homsch and Cleary swap sides and just go back on Butcher and Schultz and provide a bit more of a physical contest.
Yep.
But they went the way they went, and it worked really well. Probably I would have liked to have seen a little bit more from smaller forwards like Mead, and he probably didn't do a real lot, but you had Wingard and Gray were doing some terrific stuff at ground level, and was just great to watch. I think Gray kicked a goal that was nearly as easy as the one he kicked in the second showdown when we snatched the game away from the Crows.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask. You just mentioned Butcher to start with. What I wanted to know was we were very critical last year where his positioning was always behind the defender and he wasn't really leading. Did you notice any change in his game style in the trial? Was he more a lead up forward?
Not a lot of leading. He was sort of leading back towards the goal square a fair bit, and trying to work his opponent underneath the ball so he could sort of push them out and take the grab. But look, every time he touched the ball was pretty much a contested mark in a pack situation. His kicking was actually really good. He was nailing a lot of goals, especially in the practice before the game started. Not to mention, I think he kicked 4 goals, 1 for the day. So look, he played pretty well. I think he does need to improve his leading, but I guess we'll see how he goes. I assume he's going to play this week against the Crows, so we'll see how he goes then. I guess Ben Newton's the other one that we should really sort of
and what
concentrate
about,
on.
I was just about to ask, I mean, I wanted to get your opinion. Was he predominantly middle in for both teams? And if so, who was he going to potentially force out of the side? And also wanted to get your opinion on Jasper playing predominantly on the wing, and the other one was Brendan Archie's been spoken up in the pre-season, so I wanted to see if he actually had any influence if he did actually play this week.
I thought Newton played a stereotypical Stephen Salopek sort of role, in that he was sort of pushing through the midfield, but quite a bit sort of pushing across half back, and as that sort of link-up player as well. He moves a lot like Salopek. I loved his skills. He was nailing his kicks. He's a really good size. He's put on a lot of bulk. He's been absolutely flying this pre-season, so I think he'd be really pushing for a round 1 spot.
And certainly his clearance work in the centre square in both the white and the black team after half-time was outstanding. He really understands the centre square setups, and I'm sure Walsh has introduced quite a bit of variation there. And his ability to get the ball and get it out or get on the end of it from teammates' passes was outstanding in that game. He just really looked at home in the centre and worked hard up and down the corridor, probably between that half-forward, half-back arc.
Yeah.
So you reckon he's a true centreman, and do you think he's going to have enough speed for AFL?
He's not slow. He's certainly not quick, but he's kind of a little bit one pace. He's no slower than say Ollie Wines.
Yep.
He finds the ball. As to who will push out, I mean that's a really tough question, because I think you pretty much assume Matt White's going to start, and I still think we chase Pollock so hard. I mean, I think in the end he'll wind up in the side. I quite like him as a player. So you've already got 2 new guys in there, and then you're looking at a third one. There's certainly a bit of juggling to be done there, and you never know what's going to happen between now and round 1. So at this stage, I couldn't say who he would push out. I think it's just a matter of if Ken's true to Ken, he'll pick a team on form for round 1. And if his form's good enough, he might surprise and push out a player that you thought would be playing come round 1. But I mean, the big guns like Ebert, I thought was just superb. Baaacckk blew it away for about a quarter and a half, and then I think he just put the 6 shooters back in the holster. I think he'd done enough then. Kane Corns just worked really hard up and down the ground, as he always does. So the heavy hitters were doing as much as they needed to, but clearly were a class above. And you've got Hartlett sitting on the sidelines waiting to come in, and Ollie was solid, and he's going to start. And suddenly you think, well, it's getting a bit difficult. And Monfrey still has to come into that squad. He didn't play either in the trial game.
I think to answer your other questions, Rick, I think Pittard looked all right. He's a super fit specimen. He
looks
almost
physically really good now.
He does. He's sort of slimmed down but bulked up at the same time, which is crazy. But he looks really bloody good.
It
Expecting
looked like
big
he
things.
started to get a strong core last year at the end of the season. His hips started to look really solid and starting to shrug those tackles a little bit more.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him to bulk up any more than he is now. I think he's pretty much in prime sort of peak condition as he is.
He's just an ideal size now. He's really midfield strength, and I think you mentioned that earlier, Macca, and I think with some of those guys that you could just see the physical advantages they had over the Sandford players, that these guys are 6'1", 2, 3, playing on a flank. I mean, Brody he just strode over the top of guys. He was just so much bigger, and looking at Pittard even up against the young guys, and I had this discussion in the thread about I had a real problem working out who Amon was, and I thought he was 43, but he just looked really short to me. But often he was standing next to Pittard, and Pittard's nearly sort of close enough to 6'2". I think he's back in the 80s. He could have played as a centre half forward. He's that sort of size. He's a surprisingly big guy now, and he's reasonably tall and a good build on him. And I thought he looked really good on the wing. I think he found the ball. He works hard back and forward. He's got good pace and a penetrating kick, and he loves to run and carry the ball and can be really damaging.
You touched on Amon. We might as well talk about the new guys that we haven't really seen much of. I thought Cleary played a really good game. He's, again, like Pittard, he's in perfect peak condition at the moment. He's really put on some good bulk in his upper body, and I reckon he's ready to go.
Cleary and Omch was really
good as well.
Too.
Yeah, I really like Amon. He reminds me a lot of Jared Irons, and I'm not sure if that scares me or not. But he's sort of, he's small, he's really quick, he's got good skills, he can find the ball. I was burnt by Jared Irons, but I don't know. I reckon he's. I reckon Amon's a sneaky chance for getting a game in the first couple of rounds.
I really like to watch the replay again, because, as I said, I wasn't sure which player he was. I was at one stage thinking, he might be, is he 7? Is he 8? Or is that Boone Jones? And then I finally worked out Boone Jones was 33, just because he ran the same in the game as he does in his highlights clips. He's really got a distinctive sort of really head up, last of the straight back kind of running style. And
there was a couple of the sort of the Magpies guys in the white Guernseys that did look very, very similar to Amon. I couldn't recognise if Amon had 78 touches or if it was sort of spread out evenly amongst the other 3 guys that looked very similar to him.
It could well have been, but also just while we're going through them, his MP as well, I actually quite liked the look of him. I was looking out for him in the first half and couldn't see him, and a couple of times I attributed him, different players, to being him, and then finally saw him at half-time warming up with number 24, and thought, okay, that's him, he's not actually been on yet.
Yep.
And I quite liked the way he played. I liked the way his confidence seemed really high. He went out there and he played like he thought he belonged at that level.
Yeah.
And often with those young guys, they go out there and they're a bit timid. They're a bit overawed by it all. And I know a couple of posters thought he might have looked a bit in awe of it, but I actually thought he looked pretty confident. He looked like he was demanding the ball and then distributing it when he got it. And if he's got that sort of confidence, I can see why he impressed the recruiters.
Yeah.
'Cause if he's got that sort of confidence, that's 75% of the battle won. Because at that level, most of these guys can play, and especially if you're taking first round, he's probably outside the first round, but was certainly in the mix for a first round selection. And if rumours are believed, we would have taken him with pick 14 anyway. And he's got that skill set and he's got that self-belief. He looks really fit. He looks physically ready to go. And I know you've already said Amon is a sneaky chance. And I think Impey's obviously a big chance to get in and maybe get a few games this year as well.
I would have liked to have seen more of him. And that's not meant to be a slight on how he played. It was just that where he was playing, the ball just never got to him. Because he was playing across sort of half-back and the black team just dominated.
Yeah,
especially after half time. I mean, the white team barely got a kick.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to judge someone like Mason Shaw, who was in the white team, and he kicked a goal early on the run, looked really good, and led well and got picked off with a couple of passes, probably led more than Butcher did.
Yep.
But the ball just never got up to him, and I think at one stage he marked the ball down in the back pocket. He was just in the end started chasing kicks.
Yeah.
And looked really mobile and really fit, but he was just in the wrong side.
What did we think of Daniel Flynn?
It took me a while to even realise he was out there. I was sort of concentrating on other players and then realised that really pale guy with the moon tan must be Flynn. Sort of my guy I was with past my primus at the game, and he goes, 45, I reckon that's Flynn. And I'm like, oh yeah, it is. I think you're right. And to be honest, I didn't really notice him, and it's another reason why I want to have a look again at the replay when it goes up. I saw that highlight of him in the highlights package where I think he ran down a player, nearly ran down a player, and I just couldn't believe how quickly he moved. I mean, for a guy who's 191 or 2 centimetres and must be around 95 kilos, that he hits top speed so fast. He's got a tremendous acceleration. I mean, there are guys that are quick, and then there are guys that just really accelerate quickly. It was one of those things that set Craig Bradley apart from other players, was his ability to go hit 0 to 100 in 2 steps.
Yeah. Certainly physically he could play round one. Certainly he looks like an AFL footballer. I think he's got a lot to learn. I don't think playing at full back really suited him at all.
No.
But then again, I mean, the ball was going in there every 10 seconds, so he was under the pump quite a bit. He certainly backs himself, which I really like, and he can pull off the kicks. For a guy that doesn't have an AFL background, he was hitting targets like you wouldn't believe. There was one time in the back pocket where he was kicking in from an out on the full. He decided to play on, he took a bounce, and hit a target which I thought, well, God, there might be 2 players in our team that might be able to hit that target, and he actually hit it. I reckon he's definitely got a future.
Yeah, I've certainly heard good things about him. I know Mission Possible has spoken of him and thinks he's really got some great aptitude for the game. And I think if he can translate that into genuine ability on the ground, he could really be something, because athletically he's got all the tools. I mean, he's a big guy, he's really quick, and as you said, I mean, you obviously watched him much more closely than I did. He's pulled off difficult kicks. I think someone mentioned the thread how he had the confidence to have a run and bounce, and you probably see with the off-season chit-chat type videos that are done that he seems a really self-confident young man, and if he's got that sort of self-belief that he can carry into the football field again, that's a lot of the battle won. That if you believe in yourself and you start to pull that stuff off, he could actually turn into quite a handy player.
I was just going to ask you one last question about not individual players, but the overall body shape of the players themselves. Have you noticed much change from last year to this year? Have they got even leaner with the interchange rule and and the fitness regime, or do you think they've bulked up? Has there been any change there?
They look really strong, and they look really, match hardened already, and really hard body players. I mean, I noticed with the need that, while he might have put on a little bit of bulk, he's not massively bigger, but he really looks a really match hardened type body, AFL hardened body, and looking at guys like Pittard and Broadbent, that they look really big now. I mean, they're tall guys and look really rangy, and a lot of lean muscle mass on them without being, overly bulky, and really hard running players. Just watching them run was just frightening, I think, at times, considering it was mid 40 degree or whatever it would have been out in the sun there, and they were just flying up and down the ground. Look really, and Brad Ebert's another one, and Baaacckk, and looking at some of the photos of players like Butcher, look really, really lean, hard muscle, a lot of vascularity about his body, and Homsch is another one, looked a really good size, and Lobe, I think we probably should have mentioned as well, kicked 3 goals, just smashed it in the ruck, and just was up and down the ground all day, and looked really, really fit and strong.
Yeah.
Probably not like a Geelong-sized type bulk.
I was just about to mention that. I was going to say they look like Geelong.
more. I think they look more lean muscle mass and a bodybuilding type of team. Geelong have always been such a physically really big side over the last few years, and maybe not that massive, but certainly they're heading that way. And I think Burgess is obviously a very smart operator and would be heading them in that direction while taking into account the trends of the game and the development needs of what's still a fairly young squad out there now.
Yep. All right, moving on. Let's talk about what was one of the most hilarious but also offensive moments in this pre-season. Of course, we're talking about Guernsey Gate. Rick, do you want to lead us off on this one? What were your thoughts on what the Crows?
Yeah, mate. I thought it was very arrogant the way they handled it. Nigel Smart came out very arrogant as well. And look, I just found it, as a South Australian football supporter, I found it very disrespectful, taking even out the Port Adelaide bias that I do have. I remember, the 80s were probably my peak football following time, and it was all about all the clubs, and I just can't see how the Crows can try and take that ownership and then also try and rub it in our face and try and have it in our game at the Adelaide Oval instead of waiting for another one. And if they were really legitimate about wanting to honour the South Australian history or the clubs that they came from, I think they should be honouring the clubs and not the state Guernsey, because they're not a state team. They should have been maybe asking the SANFL clubs for in each year in Heritage Round to wear and promote one of their Guernseys. So wear the Woodville West Torrens Guernsey at AFL level one year and then cycle through them if that's how they want to honour their history. And I just think it was appallingly bad, and that was reflected by all the football former state players that came out and pretty much bagged it, except for the ones that were sycophants for the Crows.
Well, the only ones that really backed it were actually official ambassadors for the Adelaide Crows. Fancy that.
Yes, isn't that amazing? The usual suspects, of course, Stephen Rowe was shrieking from the hilltops and later topped by Graham Corns. And then you had guys like David Pemberthy in the media trying to salvage what was already in ruins. I mean, I was just appalled by it. I mean, the minute I saw it, I just thought it was a disgrace. I thought, the one thing about a state Guernsey is, right, you want to honour the traditions, that's fine, but the state Guernsey is about unifying football followers in this state. It's not designed for a club to wear for its own purposes, to try and create something it's not to be worn in a club-based competition. It's a state Guernsey, and where you want to be there and support it. I mean, how embarrassing would it be they run out there and that showdown? You would think in that game it's going to be pretty much predominantly Port Adelaide crowd, and there are going to be people booing the state Guernsey. I mean, it it was just ludicrous. It was a stupid idea from beginning to end. No, poorly thought through, ridiculously executed, and they've even got as far as producing a one-off Guernsey for the sake of a press conference. Just amazed me. And no one at some point thought, maybe this isn't a really good idea. It's like it was just a group think. They got together and a whole bunch of guys thinking the same, just fed off of each other's energy and came up with a really bad idea.
I guess they probably thought that because they were able to wear the 1930s one back in 2005, that this would go through again. But the difference clearly is that this state Guernsey is still being used every single year by the under-18s, by the SANFL state team, to try and link them in that fashion to the current state Guernsey is just wrong. It's not acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, they've already wear the state colours, so you can argue you're already honouring the traditions because you've got the colours, and there's another argument that you could have as well about whether that should have ever happened. But then to grab the state Guernsey on top of that, I mean, it was, if they wanted to honour legends of the game, it was quite obvious that they could have come to Port Adelaide and said, look, let's do something together. Put up footage of Neil Curley and Bill Wedding and Graham Corns and Stephen Kernahan up on the scoreboard, and do a roll call, honour call of some of the great South Australian state players, and instead they just went off and did their own thing, and it was exemplified by Nigel I don't care Smart's comments. He's asked, well, did you ask Port Adelaide, what do you think they'll think? And I don't care. Well, hang on a minute, we are the home team for this game. This is our home game. And if you want to do something to honour South Australian football, well, Port Adelaide have been a bigger part of South Australian football than any other club. And get together with us and we'll have come up with something with you. Not a cheap point-scoring exercise that this turned into and just blew up in their faces.
Exactly. And that's all it really was in reality. It was just designed to piss off Port Adelaide. It was just designed to try and take something away from our home game, and try and get some positive talk back into the Crows, I think.
Well, they just didn't think that anyone else would complain about it. That was the impression I got. They thought that this would be a Port versus Crows argument and they would win this easily because everyone would go, this is the right thing. And suddenly you've got Gary McIntosh with his famous quote about bullshit people in bullshit castles making bullshit decisions. I probably added one bullshit too many in there. And you've got Stephen Kernahan, you've Chris McDermott, just right from the outset said it was wrong. Naylor, Mark Naylor, John Platten, Peter Motley, let alone the Port Adelaide legends, Warren Treadray and Russell Ebert and Jeff Motley going, no, this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening. And I think they completely underestimated the amount of opposition to it. And then on top of that, they turned it into a money-spinning operation.
Exactly.
You just buy your space on the Guernsey. And didn't seem to think that this
an extraordinary decision to make.
To
try and do that when the SANFL themselves had banned the sale of the Guernsey in shops for about 10 years. And now, that's okay, let's just bloody sell them to members for $350. That's great.
Yeah. It was a black forest cake of absurdity. Just layer upon layer of bad decisions, and they just collapsed under the weight of it. And here's a club that's desperately trying to regain some ground, certainly even in the eyes of the AFL, and they just keep making horrible mistakes. I mean, Andrew Demetrio must just be looking at them wondering, what are these guys doing over there? Did they actually ever learn?
Well, enough about the Crows. Let's talk about some good Port news, and we'll talk about our new co-major sponsor, obviously Energy Australia. They're coming on for a minimum of 2 years, possibly 3, with a major sponsorship heading towards the $800,000 to $1 million mark. Rick, what are your thoughts on that one?
Pause for lag. Yeah, no, it's exciting, isn't it? It's the club's going in a forward direction, and we're picking up another sponsor and then a few more lower ones in between. It's only showing good things for where we're going, and we've got to give some credit to David Koch and old KT, they've done a great job in re-raising our profile again and getting confidence back off the field. And, well done to Energy Australia for wanting to put up and try and grow with us. And look, a lot of us have been saying for the last 10 years that, some sort of power energy company would be a great fit for the club. So it's great to see that one of them's got on board and is doing the logical.
Yeah, I don't know. There's much more you can add to that. I think it's just a great boost for the club and a real vote of confidence that a multinational energy provider has come on board. Has probably initially had reservations about getting involved in aligning itself with one particular club at the risk of disenfranchising other people, but they've decided, no, we want the exposure and we want Port Adelaide to sell that message, especially in the South Australian marketplace. And I think it's been terrific. I mean, it's been a culmination of an enormous amount of effort, and I think we probably should give a bit of credit here to Lockhart Road as well, who played his role in getting things underway and over the line. He's been terrific asset to our board since he's come on board, and the work of Koshi and Katie and the guys, Matty Richardson and in the background and the guys in the sponsorship and marketing departments, it's just been phenomenal. And I think to get that sponsor on board, and there seems to be new sponsors being announced every week at various levels at the club. It's showing a real show of faith in where Port Adelaide is heading and the image we're portraying, and the fact that I think we basically kicked the lid off the coffin almost from 2 or 3 years ago, where things were just going so badly. The old Soaring Securities and my ATM days and Aussie ATM days. I was at the trial game on Saturday. I saw one of the old my ATM Guernseys. One of the supporters was wearing.
I was wearing one actually.
Well, just had a little shudder, and I'll just watch the game now and think of Energy Australia. So it's just been fantastic. It's been fantastic recovery by the club under some really astute leadership, some strong business acumen, people making, as opposed to Guernsey Gate, people making good decisions at the right time in the right place, and really starting to build a foundation for the future now and become a really strong, financially viable and successful on-field club.
It's just brilliant to have two instantly recognisable national brands as our major sponsors. You can't beat it. It's just a great time to be part of the Port Adelaide Footy Club as a supporter, as a member. And as you said, I mean, going back 3 or 4 years ago, we were picking up sponsors of brands that no one had actually ever heard of before. And look, I think a lot of credit has to go to VIP and Bill Viss as well for getting on board. For getting on board when no one else really wanted to. He deserves a lot of credit for helping to push Port Adelaide back up to where it should be.
And I think the role of Koshi as well in his development as a president of the club over the period he's been there has just been tremendous. I think a lot of people thought it was a bit of a novelty appointment, I guess, when he first came on board, and I think they didn't appreciate the actual business acumen of him and how when he takes something on, he takes it on full bore and seriously, and I think he's really grown into the role of being quite a respected president and a strong voice of football.
Moving on to another appointment which came out of the blue. It was quite unexpected. I'm talking about Sean Hard as the new Director of Coaching. How did we see that one? I think it's a good move.
He certainly has a real passion for the game. He understands it. His ability to convey that, his enthusiasm is already quite obvious. I mean, I spoke to one of the guys in communications who was at his first press conference, and he said he came away from it and I think he wanted to run through brick walls for him. He's just such a passionate, enthusiastic, positive guy, and I think he's obviously going to have a different role to Richo, but his ability to work with people is clearly one of the real prime assets that they are after. And I think the development of players, the character of players, and the confidence of players, he's just going to be tremendous in that role. And I think Kenny knew that about him. He obviously knew him well from Gold Coast days, and he's a guy of great character and a very strong personality. I mean, I think we sort of talked about his religious beliefs, and my view is that just shows that if he's willing to hold that sort of strong belief in a football environment, shows the strength of his character. And the positive nature of the guy is just infectious, and I think it's going to be a real bonus around the club, and I think Ken certainly thinks that way about him as well.
Well, there must have been a bit of a history with Ken and Sean with the Gold Coast connection there too, I'd imagine. So been waiting for Kenny to bring his own little stamp to the club, so maybe that's part of it. And I agree with Ford. You know, people might want to be a bit dubious about his religious beliefs, but whatever. You know, if he's strong, yeah, that's right. If he's strong to his convictions, and and he's a strong character, and he can fill that role that we need. Well, good luck to him. And I mean, he was a fantastic, courageous player, and if he can instill that to our players to play with the same courage that he did, I can't see how we can fail.
Some more appointments. Obviously, we had the 5 re-signings at Christmas, which was a fantastic idea by the club. They got involved with Bigfooty as well and gave us some special clues.
Yes.
So good on the club for doing that. That was brilliant. Of course, we're talking about Jay Schultz signed to the end of 2015. We've got Needham Hartlett signed to the end of 2016. Brady Ebert to the end of 2017. And the key signing here, Travis Boak, to the end of 2018. What a massive signing that is.
It was just a tremendous week of good news, that one. I guess we were all hanging out a bit, hoping Ollie Wines would be one of the 5, but I think that's on its way. I think that will happen. But to get those 5 and are really high profile players and for quite long lengths of time. Just again, another real vote of confidence in the club by the players this time, and it was great fun. It was a great fun initiative by the club to be posting those clues. And I was speaking to Andrew Fuss about it a few weeks back, and he said that they were getting more traffic for people looking at for the clues than they were getting on the announcements. Which was just amazing. People were just everyone was just joining in and having such a great time with it. That it was a real feel-good story for the club that they were getting the signings done, and they were doing it in a way that engaged the whole supporter base and really got people interested in what was happening. And I think we probably all were checking the website at midday the next day to see who the next signing was, and then hanging out for the next clue. And I think everyone got into it, and again, a really infectious, fun thing, and everybody was enjoying themselves.
Especially with Boakey, I think, given the circus, and it was a circus with his last re-signing, for him to come out when he really didn't need to sign at that moment and do such a long-term contract, 5 years, 5 more seasons we're going to have him. I think that speaks a lot about where he believes this club is heading.
I think he certainly ruined the fun for a lot of people who would want to start talking about free agency and worrying themselves senseless for 6 months in another year, and it's just totally ended any speculation in that regard, and really just shown his level of commitment to this club. And I think he's just been fantastic. I guess he was a bit of a surprise drafting back at the time. He was one of those guys who just sort of climbed up the draft ladder right up into the day. And I remember at the time when he was drafted, I was listening to, I think it was Scene, and they go, "Oh, big room in Port Adelaide are going to draft Travis Boak." And I go, "Who?" You're diving through that and trying to find some more out about him, because he missed some footy with, I think, stress fractures in his back from playing cricket, and so he'd sort of been off the radar a bit, kind of a familiar refrain of Port Adelaide draftees over the years. But he's just grown into such a great leader at this club and such a good player. I mean, he's probably suffered a bit from the Selwood comparisons over the years, which has been unfortunate and unfair on him, because Selwood's just been in a super team, and Baaackk's been in a team that's really limped along for a while there. But I think as Port Adelaide stocks have risen, I think Baaacck certainly led the way and has become, a real quality player, and was a great signing.
That's it. Now we've got our first NAB Cup game. Well, it's not really the NAB Cup anymore, is it? The first NAB Challenge game this week on Sunday at Richmond Oval. We're playing the Adelaide Crows. Just quickly, Rick, what do you expect or what do you hope to see out of this game from Port Adelaide?
Well, like you guys highlighted from the trial, we're going to be coming up against stronger opposition compared to the weaker opposition. So I'd be really looking forward to making sure we're getting that run and a dare and that slingshot that you were talking about. I want to keep that enthusiasm going for that attacking play, and I'm really excited to see how we're going to structure up defensively as well. Are we going to play with the 8 defenders with the 2 pushing back, and have we got a bit more variety this year? At times we maybe became a little bit predictable last year with our style of play. So let's hope to see more run, more dash, bit of excitement, and a bit of variety in our gameplay.
Yeah, pretty much the same. It's really difficult to say. I'm sort of Kenny Hinkley on this. I think the Port Crows games are just getting overdone by the AFL. I'd really rather we didn't play them in pre-season. I think it detracts from the big games during the year, especially the one we're going to have, the showdown this year at Adelaide Oval to kick it off. I think it would have been better had we not played them at all in the pre-season. I think it's not that hard to organise, to get a Melbourne team over here instead. It's only an hour flight. But anyway, having said that, again, it's really just seeing, I guess, an advancement on what we did last year. I think as the season wore on in 2013, you really saw the players become more and more comfortable with what Ken wanted. They understood the game plan, what he wanted done, and they executed it better and better. And probably the only criticism would be that they just never quite managed to do it for 4 quarters. There was always those lapses. I think obviously in the Geelong game there was a lapse in that 3rd quarter where the game just got away from us, and even in that Carlton game in round 22 where Brody deliberately hit the post to deny the Crows a chance of playing in finals. He probably designed the Guernsey for them as well, come to think of it. So I think it's just seeing now an extension of what they were doing last year, that they executed well for 4 quarters, and be interesting to see the sort of tweaks that Phil Walsh has brought. As I recall, I don't think we were a really, really good clearance side from centre squares, especially during the year, probably mid.
You're breaking up quite a bit there.
Oh, okay. We were probably not a great clearance side, probably around mid-table, and I think we really I'd really like to see an improvement on that, on getting the ball away from stoppages and from the centre bounces, and that Phil Walsh's influence there, and love to see Butcher really fire up and have a really strong 2-pronged attack with him and Schultz providing that tall marking power, Westhoff working up and down the ground, and then guys like Need and Monfrey's really giving us some ground level firepower as well as Robbie Gray.
Yeah, for me it's all about the youngsters for Sunday. I'm really looking forward to see how Ben Newton goes. I'd love to see guys like Mason Shaw and Jarman Impey get games. Carl Amon as well, maybe Burton Jones if he's able to do that. And of course I want to see how our forward structure looks. So I think Westhoff's not going to play, I think Hinkley said on the weekend. So it'll be pretty much Schultz and Butcher, and hopefully Shaw in there as well.
It'll be a chance.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping to see us use a lot of dash and a lot of creativity and confidence. I think that's where we're going to do some really good things this year.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, I think
Absolutely.
I think that's it for today. First podcast for 2014 out the way.
Yep.
Of course, if anyone out there that's listening has a suggestion for a topic that you want us to talk about, feel free to let us know on the Bigfooty forums. Otherwise, thanks for coming on, guys.
Great. Thank you for the invitation.
Go the power.
Yeah, no dramas.
Absolutely.